The last few years have been a wild ride for the car market, and for the most part, this can be attributed to the pandemic. And it's coming up on 4 years since it all began. And truthfully, the fact that we're coming up on 4 years since the pandemic started, well, that's something that's a bit hard for me to wrap my mind around. But regardless, the pandemic was the start of what turned the car market into the mess that it was for the last few years. And it wasn't until recently, like the last 6 months, that the car market has started to return to normal. But even what we would consider to be normal today is still a far cry from what normal was just a few short years ago. And so in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down the current state of the car market in 2024, how the current car market compares to what many of us would consider a normal car market, and whether or not I believe that a car market crash will continue throughout 2024. So let's get started. Now, I do want to remind all of you that I currently am running the final sale of the season for my car sharing masterclass. You can use the link down in the description below to access the course, and you can use the code NEWYEAR2024 to get $150 off your purchase. Whenever we talk about the car market, many people, including myself, talk about a car market crash in the context of the market returning to normal. But what is normal? And truthfully, this is a much more difficult question to answer than you would think, but it is incredibly important whenever we're talking about the context of the car market and where the market is trending in 2024. Because depending on your definition of normal, this will dictate your expectations on where you think the car market will go, whether or not you think right now is the right time to buy a car, and ultimately how you should plan on making a vehicle purchase in the near or distant future. Are we defining normal as pre-pandemic, so like a 2019 car market? Are we basing normal off vehicle production, so whenever production reaches maximum capacity? Or are we basing this off of price, so once dealerships are no longer charging above MSRP for cars and they're finally willing to negotiate, haggle, and discount on cars that they're selling? This is a really difficult concept and question to answer because the truth is normal probably isn't any of these scenarios. But to dig into why this is the case, let's take a look at some of the data and some of the biggest factors affecting today's car market compared to the car market prior to the pandemic. And let's start with price. The average cost of a used car in 2019 was $20,399. In 2023, the average cost was $27,133. That's a 33% increase. You can also see a breakdown here with 1-year-old used cars increasing in price by 67% over the last 4 years, 2-year-old cars increasing by 57.7%, and 6-year-old cars increasing by 53.4%. And while used cars have decreased in recent months and they are off from their peak, this decrease hasn't offset the increase that we had seen previously. And while new cars aren't any better, and currently the average cost of a new car is around $48,000. This is up about $10,000 from 2019 levels, which was a time period where you could buy a new car for less than $40,000. And believe it or not, in 2023, we saw higher new car prices than what we even saw in 2022. And so while used cars have actually decreased in price over the last 6 to 12 months, new cars haven't, and they've actually gone up. In 2023, new car prices, while having fluctuated a bit month to month, are overall higher than we've ever seen before, even taking into account the car market peak that we saw in 2022. And this brings us to one of the biggest factors impacting the current car market. And this is a topic that I've talked about a lot in my videos in the past, and that is the death of the affordable car. One of the biggest factors impacting both new and used car prices in the current car market is the extinction of the sub $20,000 car. Automakers are simply discontinuing affordable new cars, and this is having a massive impact on consumers and the car market as a whole. Back in 2019, you had a large variety of new cars to choose from that were sub $20,000. Many of these cars have gone up in price, like the Volkswagen Jetta, which used to start at $19,640, but today starts at $21,435, or the Toyota Corolla, which used to start at $19,630, but now starts at $22,050. But many of these vehicles have also been straight up discontinued, like the Toyota Yaris, Honda Fit, Ford Fiesta, Kia Rio, Ford Focus, Chevy Cruze, and many more. It is important to note that some of these cars were discontinued slightly before the pandemic, either at the end of 2019 or at the beginning of 2020. But regardless, we have seen a distinct trend over the last 5 years in the car market, and that is that automakers aren't selling as many of these cheap, affordable, basic cars. While in 2019, you had a variety of really nice sub $20,000 cars to choose from, and while today there are a few different cars that you can buy for under $20,000 sticker, like the Nissan Versa for example, there's actually only one car in the market that you can buy for under $20,000 all in, and that's the Mitsubishi Mirage. So if you have a $20,000 budget for a new car, then you have one choice, and it's a Mirage. Good luck. Now the solution here is a relatively simple one: buy used. In fact, let's face it, if you have $20,000 to spend on a car, which I would say is a relatively relatively decent budget for a vehicle, there is no reality where you should be spending that money on a Mitsubishi Mirage. You should absolutely be buying used. But the problem is, while the used market is absolutely better when it comes to affordability than the new market, and there are a lot of really solid cars out there on the used market for under 20 grand. In fact, I buy them all the time. I purchased 8 of them last year alone. We also have to acknowledge the impact that the lack of sub $20,000 cars on the new market is having on the used market. And the inventory of $20,000 cars or cheaper on the used market is also going down. According to a study by IC Cars, in 2019, 49.3% of used cars on the market cost less than 20 grand. Today, only 12.4% of used cars cost less than 20 grand. And those sub $20,000 cars are older, higher mileage, and in worse condition today than they were back in 2019. So the $20,000 that you do spend today isn't going as far as it once did. You're getting a lesser quality car for a higher price. And this is a major problem. Now, whenever it comes to why automakers are discontinuing the sub $20,000 car, I would love nothing more than to sit here and place all of the blame on automakers themselves. But that wouldn't be accurate. Because while automakers absolutely are cutting the affordable car out of their lineup for the sake of profit and increasing margin, that certainly isn't the only reason. And the unfortunate reality here is that the sub $20,000 car just wasn't selling as well as it used to. And whenever we look at consumer trends and we look at what people were buying between 2019 and 2023, people aren't really buying these basic sub $20,000 cars. Certainly not as often as they're buying the higher trim, more expensive alternatives. And so while of course these automakers cut these cars out of their lineup for their own benefit, they also did it because there just wasn't really demand for these vehicles either. And unfortunately, consumers have sort of shot themselves in the foot because they were buying more expensive, higher optioned, higher trimmed vehicles, and now as a result, these cheaper alternatives don't even exist. Now, as far as inventory goes, this is sort of the last major piece of the puzzle. And while inventory has improved, like a lot, it still isn't back to where it was pre-pandemic. As of last month, which was the most recent data we have, inventory was at 2.56 million for new vehicles. This is significantly better than what we saw this same time in 2021, which was about 1 million new vehicles. But it's still well below what we saw pre-pandemic in 2019 with about 3.6 million new vehicles. But again, whenever it comes to the car market, we have to ask ourselves the question, what is normal? Because for many of us, our knee-jerk reaction may be that normal is whatever pre-pandemic levels were. Pre-pandemic prices, inventory, selection. But at least whenever it comes to inventory, there's really strong evidence to suggest that normal is in fact not pre-pandemic. And normal is something we've really never seen before up until now. Automakers like General Motors have come out and directly said that inventory levels will never return to pre-pandemic levels due to a shift in the way that dealerships sell cars. Automakers have come to the conclusion that it is simply more profitable to have less cars on dealership lots. And many experts believe that having inventory of between 2 and 2.5 million cars is in fact probably our new normal, which is exactly where inventory is as I make this video. Now, as far as 2024 predictions go, I think used car prices will continue to go down, but I don't think that there will be an instant or a significant drop at any point this year. Instead, I think there will be gradual decreases month over month, and this time next year, we'll look back and see that prices have declined anywhere between 8 and 12%. And I ultimately think that there are going to be a few key components that play into the car market. I do think we'll see a rise of delinquencies and repossessions. The reality is, and I've talked about this in my videos before, the cost of cars versus the amount of people that buy cars versus what the average consumer can afford, those numbers just don't add up. And whenever we begin to mix in the general cost of living, well, in my opinion, it's a disaster waiting to happen. Student loans will also continue to take a toll on the car market, and their toll will probably become greater. This sort of plays into my first point, but student loans are back and they are ramping up this year as well. This is going to affect people who bought or own cars who aren't able to make their minimum monthly payment. And the final factor is interest rates. Interest rates haven't really had the impact that I think many of us expected them to have on the overall car market. And while it has caused for demand to decrease in the car market, it hasn't really caused it to crash. I believe that interest rates, as they hopefully improve, I don't think that this will have a massive impact on the car market as a whole. Based off of these predictions and just what I know about the used car market as a whole, I believe that used car prices prices will continue to fall. The car market in general will continue to fall, but I don't believe that this fall or price decrease will happen in one single event. And I certainly don't think it will happen quickly. And well, as far as new cars go, I don't really think that new cars are going to go down substantially. We've already gotten a lot of insight into what automakers are pricing new cars for 2024 at. And for the most part, these models are seeing price increases. And so even if we do see an increase in dealer incentives and discounts, I don't think that these increases will be enough to offset how much more expensive cars are directly from the manufacturer. And so while I don't think that new car prices are going to be skyrocketing, I also don't think they're going down, and I think that we'll be lucky if new car transaction prices are flat year over year this time next year. And unfortunately, as long as new cars are more expensive, used cars are also going to be more expensive. These two markets really do work hand in hand, and unfortunately there is a correlation here. And so there you have it, my predictions and thoughts with the 2024 car market. We do have some of the final data for 2023 coming in very soon, so I will be making a video on that, so be sure to stay tuned. But like always, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.